Clean it properly. You're embarrassing everyone.
I'm cleaning the mess, ma'am.
This isn't right. You're fired right now.
Be careful who you dismiss.
I'm recording everything. If I knew who you were,
Character reveals truth, not titles.
Get this janitor out of my gala before he ruins the whole night. The music stopped before the sentence finished. 300 guests turned toward the white carpet at the center of the Carter Foundation Summer Gala. Crystal glasses hung in midair. A violinist froze with her bow still touching the string. Under 2,000 golden lights, Marcus Reed knelt beside a spreading stain of red wine. His gray service jacket dark at one sleeve, his hands carefully picking broken glass from the floor. Evelyn Carter stood over him in an emerald gown that glittered like money. She still held the microphone from her charity speech. Her smile was calm, polished, almost beautiful. That made it worse. "Mom," Marcus said, looking up but not rising yet. A guest stepped backward into my tray. "I can have this cleaned in a few minutes." Evelyn tilted her head. The lawn went quiet enough to hear ice shifting in a silver bucket. "A guest?" she repeated. "No, sweetheart. My guests do not make messes. People like you clean them." A few nervous laughs moved through the crowd. Not real laughter. The kind people give when they are afraid to be the first decent person in the room. Marcus set one shard of glass onto the tray. Slow, careful. Across the lawn, a young server named Lily Bennett stood near the catering table with both hands around her phone. She was 20, tired, and wearing shoes that had already rubbed blisters into her heels. Marcus had helped her lift a tray earlier that evening, when no one else even looked. Now she watched him kneeling in front of the richest people in Georgia, and her stomach tightened. Evelyn stepped closer. "This carpet is hand-woven Italian wool," she said into the microphone. "It costs more than you probably make in a year." Marcus rose then. Not fast, not angry, just steady. "I understand," he said. "I am sorry for the disruption. I will take care of it." That answer should have ended it. It did not. Evelyn's eyes narrowed. She was used to fear. She was used to people shrinking. Marcus had not shrunk, and that small refusal bothered her more than the stain. "You understand?" she said, then kneel back down. A woman in a silver dress whispered, "Evelyn, it's fine." "Really?" Evelyn did not look at her. "Kneel," she said again. "Scrub it. Use your jacket if you have to." The words crossed the lawn like a cold wind. Marcus looked at the carpet, then at the guests, senators, bankers, executives, people who gave speeches about dignity and wrote checks with cameras watching. Not one of them moved. So Marcus knelt, not because he was broken, because he had learned long ago that a man could bend his knees and still keep his spine. He folded a towel and pressed it into the wine. His jaw stayed still. His breathing stayed even, but behind his eyes, something old and painful stirred. Evelyn watched him work. Then she lifted a fresh glass of champagne from a passing tray. Lily saw it first. Her lips parted. "No," she whispered. Evelyn tipped the glass slowly. Gold liquid spilled over Marcus's hair, down the back of his neck, into the collar of his service jacket. It ran across the same carpet he was trying to clean. Gasps broke across the lawn. Evelyn smiled into the microphone. "Oops," she said, "my hand slipped." No one laughed this time. Marcus stopped moving. One drop of champagne slid from his chin and fell onto the towel. For a second, the whole estate seemed to hold its breath. Then Evelyn leaned down, close enough for him to hear without the microphone. "People like you should remember where they belong." Marcus lifted his eyes. They were calm, too calm. That was the first thing that unsettled her. He stood slowly, champagne dripping from his collar, glass crunching under one shoe. He did not wipe his face. He did not raise his voice. He only looked at her like a man memorizing evidence. Evelyn straightened, suddenly irritated by the silence she had created. "You're fired," she snapped. "Right now. In front of everyone. Consider it my final act of charity tonight." She turned toward the security line. "Brian, get him out." Brian Walsh, head of security, moved through the crowd with 2 guards behind him. His face carried the blank confidence of a man who had spent years following power and calling it duty. He gripped Marcus by the arm. Marcus did not resist. But before they turned him away, he looked back at Evelyn. "You should be careful," he said quietly, "with the people you throw away." Evelyn laughed, sharp and false. A threat from a janitor. How touching. Then her gaze dropped to his canvas bag. One more thing, she said. Search it. His kind always takes souvenirs. This time, even the guests who had stayed silent looked uncomfortable. Brian hesitated for half a breath. Then he reached for the bag. Lily's hand shook as she kept recording. Somewhere in that bright, expensive silence, the night had already changed. Evelyn Carter just did not know it yet. Brian's fingers closed around the strap of Marcus's canvas bag, and the whole lawn seemed to lean closer. The quartet had stopped again. The rich, careful music died under the oak trees, leaving only the little sounds people make when they are ashamed and trying not to show it. A cough near the bar, a heel shifting on the grass, ice knocking against glass. Marcus looked at Brian's hand on the bag. Then he looked at Evelyn. You already fired me, he said. You do not need to do this. Evelyn's smile stayed in place, but her eyes hardened. I decide what needs to be done on my property. Brian gave the strap a sharp pull. Marcus let it slide from his shoulder. He did not fight. He did not beg. That made Brian rougher than he needed to be. Open it, Evelyn said. Brian turned the bag upside down over the gravel path by the iron gate. Everything fell. A dented lunchbox. A steel thermos with gray tape around the handle, a folded rain poncho, a paperback book with the spine cracked white, a small bottle of aspirin, a pack of work gloves. Then a photograph in a clear plastic sleeve landed face down near Brian's shoe. Nothing silver, nothing crystal, nothing stolen. Just the small, ordinary things a working man carried through a long night. A woman near the champagne tower whispered, "Good Lord." Her husband touched her elbow, warning her to stop. Brian crouched and pushed through the items with 2 fingers, like poverty might rub off on him. He opened the lunchbox. Empty. He shook the thermos. Coffee splashed inside. He flipped through the paperback and let the pages flutter. Nothing, one of the guards murmured. Brian shot him a look. Evelyn lifted her chin, refusing to let the moment turn against her. Check everything. Brian reached for the photograph. Marcus moved before he could stop himself. Leave that. It was not loud, but it cut. Brian paused with the picture halfway in his hand. A little smirk pulled at one corner of his mouth. Men like Brian heard pain as permission. He lifted the photo toward the string lights. The image showed a black woman in a gray cleaning uniform, standing in a marble lobby with a mop bucket beside her. She was laughing at whoever held the camera. Her hair was tucked under a scarf. Her hands looked tired. Her face looked kind. Brian glanced from the photo to Marcus. Family business, huh? He flicked the photograph. It spun once in the air and landed on the gravel. That was the moment Marcus almost broke. Not when Evelyn poured champagne over him. Not when she called him less than human. Not when 300 people watched him kneel and said nothing. But when his mother's face hit the ground. His breath caught. His right hand closed. For 1 second, every board member, every lawyer, every contract waiting in secret behind his name meant nothing. He was just a son watching the only photograph he carried of his mother lying in the dirt. Lily saw his face through her phone screen, and tears blurred the image. Marcus knelt slowly. He picked up the photograph with both hands. He wiped the gravel dust from the plastic sleeve, using the cleanest part of his cuff. Though his cuff was stained with wine and champagne, he held the photo close to his chest. No one spoke. Even Evelyn seemed to understand she had touched something deeper than pride. Marcus slid the photo inside his jacket, against his heart. Then he stood. Are you satisfied? He asked. Brian looked away first. Evelyn gave a small laugh, but it came out thin. Get him off the property. Marcus gathered his things one by one. He took his time, the lunchbox, the thermos, the book, the gloves. Each item went back into the bag with care, as if the care itself was an accusation. Then the iron gate opened. The guards walked him out under the archway. Gravel crunched beneath their shoes. Behind him, the Gala lights glowed soft and golden, the kind of beautiful that hides ugly things well. Lily lowered her phone, her hands shaking. A waiter beside her whispered, "Did you get it?" She nodded, unable to speak. Everything? She swallowed. Everything. Across the lawn, Walter Grant, the oldest board member at Carter Freight, stood beside his table with his napkin still in his hand. He was 72, white-haired, and old enough to know the difference between a mistake and a revelation. He had seen cruel executives before. He had excused some, worked around others. But this had gone past temper, past arrogance. This was character, and now everyone had seen it. Evelyn returned to the stage because people like her believed a room could be repaired if they spoke loudly enough. "Friends," she said into the microphone, "forgive the interruption." No applause came. She smiled harder. "Tonight is about giving, about lifting up those who need us." Walter looked toward the closed gate. For the first time in years, he felt ashamed of the chair he held on that board. Outside the estate, Marcus walked alone along the dark shoulder of the road. The champagne had dried sticky against his collar. Heat lightning flickered beyond the trees. His car waited under a leaning pine, an old sedan with one headlight clouded at the edge. He got in. He sat there in silence. Then he pulled the photograph from inside his jacket and set it on the dashboard. His mother smiled back from another lifetime. Marcus touched the cracked leather watch on his wrist. It had belonged to her. It had not ticked in years. He picked up his phone and called Rachel Moore. She answered on the second ring, voice alert. "Marcus?" He looked through the windshield at the faint gold glow of Evelyn's Gala behind the trees. "Move the closing up," he said. Rachel went quiet. "How soon? Tomorrow morning." A breath. "That will make noise." Marcus watched a moth circle the dome light, trapped and frantic. "Good," he said. "Let them hear it." By sunrise, the video was already moving through Carter Freight like a match dropped into dry grass. Lily Bennett had not slept. She sat on the edge of her bed in her small apartment outside Marietta, still wearing the black slacks from the gala. Her feet soaking in a plastic tub of cold water. Her phone rested in both hands. She watched the recording again, though every second of it made her stomach twist. Marcus kneeling, Evelyn smiling, champagne falling, Brian tossing the photograph. Lily pressed pause on Marcus's face when he picked up the picture of his mother. That was the part she could not get past. Not the cruelty. She had seen rich people be cruel before. It was the silence around him. The way power could fill a lawn and still leave one decent man alone. Her roommate Carla stood in the doorway with a mug of coffee. "You need to send that to somebody," Carla said softly. "I did. To who?" "The servers. 2 drivers I know. My cousin who works dispatch." Carla's eyes widened. "Girl." Lily looked down at the frozen frame. "I am tired of people doing things because they think nobody like us can prove it." By 7 in the morning, the video had reached the Carter Freight loading dock. Men in reflective vests watched it beside vending machines that hummed under flickering lights. One driver, Raymond Ellis, replayed the part where Evelyn said people like Marcus did not belong among her guests. His mouth tightened. "She says that about all of us," he said. Another driver shook his head. "My wife works housekeeping at Emory." Same tone. Different building. Nobody laughed. By 8, office assistants had it. By 8:30, the kitchen staff had it. By 9, a night guard named Paul Dawson watched it alone in the security break room and lowered his phone before the video ended. He had a daughter Lily's age. He imagined her standing on that lawn, watching grown people choose comfort over courage, and something in him sank. On the 30th floor, Evelyn Carter knew none of this. She arrived in dark sunglasses and a cream suit, moving through the executive lobby, as if the marble belonged to her personally. Her assistant, Megan Price, hurried beside her with a tablet clutched to her chest. "The gala photos are ready," Megan said. "Press likes the children's scholarship angle. The governor's office sent a thank you note." "Good," Evelyn said. "Post the photo of me at the podium first." The lights looked incredible. Megan hesitated. There was also a message from Brian. Something about staff filming last night. Evelyn stopped at her office door. Megan's breath caught. She hated giving Evelyn bad news. Everyone did. Bad news near Evelyn always became someone else's fault. "What exactly did he say?" Evelyn asked. "He said some of the servers may have recorded the incident." Evelyn stared at her. Then she laughed. "Incident? Megan, I corrected an employee who ruined a donor event. He was fired in front of guests. He was lucky I did not press charges for suspicion of theft." Megan looked down at the tablet. She had seen the video on her own phone 15 minutes earlier. She had not told Evelyn. Not yet. Fear makes people careful, but shame makes them quiet. Evelyn pushed open her office door. Draft a statement in case anyone asks. Something about maintaining standards at private events. Yes, Mom. And schedule the compensation discussion for Monday after the board call. I am not letting some activist buyer slow down my retention bonus. Megan nodded, but her fingers trembled against the tablet. Across town, in a quiet law office above a bakery, Marcus Reed signed his name on the first page at 9:12.
Rachel Moore
Sat across from him, glasses low on her nose, a stack of documents arranged in perfect order. She was 51, sharp, calm, and the kind of attorney who never raised her voice, because she never needed to. A junior associate stood near the printer, afraid to breathe too loudly. The Hartley Family Trust has executed, Rachel said. Crestline Pension has executed. Dunbar Institutional is waiting for confirmation of wire receipt. Marcus signed the second page. The room smelled like coffee, toner, and fresh bread from downstairs. Outside the window, Atlanta traffic moved in slow silver lines. Rachel watched him. You are very quiet. Marcus kept signing. I have been quiet for 3 months. That was strategy. No, he said, and his pen stopped for the first time. Part of it was grief. Rachel did not answer. She knew about Clara Reed. She knew Marcus had taken the janitor job in that tower because his mother had cleaned the same hallway for nearly 20 years. She knew he had built Reed Meridian Capital from the sale of a logistics company that started with 2 leased trucks and 1 borrowed office. She knew he could have walked into Carter Freight as a buyer, shaken hands, taken meetings, and been treated like royalty. But Marcus had chosen a mop. He had wanted the truth from the floor, and the floor had spoken. Rachel slid another document forward. When this closes, you control 62%. Marcus signed. When does the board know? At noon. Emergency session notice for Monday morning. Leadership review. The junior associate looked up from the printer. Marcus capped the pen. Used those words exactly. Rachel studied his face. And Evelyn? Marcus looked at the photograph of his mother lying beside the documents. Clean now, safe now. She had 3 months to learn my name, he said. She has until Monday to learn why it mattered. At noon, 7 members of the Carter Freight Board received the same email, and every one of them read it twice. Meridian Holdings, majority shareholder of Carter Freight Systems, hereby requests an emergency board session Monday morning at 8 o'clock. Attendance mandatory. Agenda, leadership review. Walter Grant was sitting on his back porch in Buckhead when the message arrived. His coffee had gone cold beside him. The Sunday paper lay folded on his knee, unread. He had not slept well after the gala. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw champagne running down Marcus Reed's collar. He saw the photograph hit the gravel. He saw himself standing there with clean hands and a dirty conscience. His wife, Elaine, stepped out through the screen door. Walter? He did not look up. You've been out here all morning. He handed her the phone. She read the email, then looked at him over her glasses. Meridian Holdings? New controlling shareholder. I thought the Carter Family Trust was still shopping its stake. So did Evelyn. Elaine sat down slowly. She had been at the gala, too. She had stopped wearing her necklace halfway through the night because the pearls suddenly felt heavy against her throat. Do you know who Meridian is? Walter stared across the yard at the magnolia tree bending in the heat. No. Then his face changed. A small tightening around the eyes. But I think Monday is going to be a hard day for people who deserve one. Across Atlanta, phones began ringing. Board members called attorneys. Attorneys called assistants. Assistants called private bankers who pretended not to know more than they did. Nobody had a face for Meridian. Nobody had a founder. Nobody had a photo. There were filings, yes. Clean, legal, deliberate. But behind the company was only another company. And behind that, a wall of paper built by people who knew exactly how to build walls. By 1:30, Evelyn had received the board notice. She read it standing in her dressing room at the estate, still in a silk robe, while a housekeeper quietly gathered empty champagne flutes from the night before. Sunlight poured through the tall windows and made the room look innocent. Leadership review. Evelyn said. The housekeeper kept her eyes down. Evelyn laughed under her breath. Activist investors always think they invented pressure. She forwarded the email to Megan with one line. Prepare my retention package for Monday. Then she opened the Gala photos. There she was beneath the lights, one hand over her heart, speaking about children she had never met. There she was beside a senator. There she was laughing with donors near the oak trees. She posted the best one with a caption about compassion, community, and lifting every voice. She did not post the white carpet. She did not post the gate. She did not know Lily's video had reached half her company before lunch. In a small apartment near the airport, Raymond Etlis showed the footage to his wife at their kitchen table. Their grandson sat nearby eating cereal, his legs swinging from the chair. His wife covered her mouth when Evelyn poured the champagne. Raymond, she whispered. That man did not even move. Raymond nodded. That is what scared her. What? He did not look broken. The boy looked up from his cereal. Grandpa, why did she do that? Raymond turned the phone face down. He took a breath. He was 64 years old. He had driven freight through storms, layoffs, and managers who called him by the wrong name for years. He knew children deserved the truth, but not all at once. Because some people forget a job is not the same thing as a person, he said. And when they forget that, they become smaller than the people they look down on. His wife reached across the table and touched his hand. By Sunday evening, the video had passed through dispatch, payroll, warehouse crews, night cleaners, drivers, former employees, cousins, spouses, church groups, and one local reporter who had not posted it yet because she was still confirming names. Fear still held the company in its teeth, but fear was losing its grip. At Carter Freight headquarters, the night shift came in under a gray sky. The lobby smelled of lemon cleaner and old marble. Paul Dawson stood at the security desk, watching employees badge through with quiet faces. They all knew. They all had seen it. Yet they spoke in low voices as if Evelyn herself lived inside the walls. Near the east hallway, an older cleaner named Mrs. Alvarez pushed her cart past the place Marcus usually started his shift. She stopped when she saw his mop bucket sitting in the supply closet, clean and empty. He coming back? She asked Paul. Paul looked toward the elevators. I do not know. Mrs. Alvarez nodded, but her eyes shone. He always asked about my son. Every Monday. Nobody upstairs knows I have a son. Paul swallowed. Before he could answer, the service elevator opened. Marcus stepped out, not in a suit, not yet. He wore the same gray uniform, fresh, pressed. His hair was clean. His collar was buttoned. On his wrist sat the old watch that did not tick. The lobby went still. Mrs. Alvarez stared at him. Mr. Marcus. He gave her a small smile. Evening, Mom. Paul stepped around the desk. You do not have to be here. Marcus looked down the east hallway, where the marble caught the overhead lights in long, pale strips. Yes, he said quietly. I do. He picked up the mop. For the next hour, he worked the floor in slow, patient strokes, the same way his mother had. Every pass across the marble was calm. Every movement carried memory. People walked by and watched him differently now. Not because they knew the whole truth, because they were beginning to understand they never had. Monday morning arrived heavy and gray, the kind of Atlanta morning that made glass towers look tired. By 7:30, the 30th floor of Carter Freight Systems smelled of coffee and nerves. Assistants moved faster than usual. Board packets were stacked in careful piles. The conference room lights glowed too bright against the long walnut table. Nobody said what everyone was thinking. Meridian. Leadership review. The video. Walter Grant stood near the window, one hand in his pocket, looking down at the traffic far below. He had served on boards for nearly 40 years. He knew the choreography of corporate trouble, the private calls, the careful words, the lawyers with soft voices and sharp teeth. But this felt different. This felt like judgment wearing a business suit. At 7:45, Rachel Moore stepped out of the elevator. She wore a charcoal dress, carried a black leather briefcase, and walked like someone who had no interest in asking permission. Behind her came two associates with sealed folders. Behind them came Marcus Reed. For 1 second, the reception area forgot to breathe. He was not wearing the gray uniform now. He wore a dark suit, plain and perfectly fitted. White shirt, no flashy tie, no gold watch. Just the old cracked leather band on his wrist, the watch that did not tick. Megan Price saw him first from behind her desk. Her mouth opened slightly. "Mr. Reed?" Marcus gave a small nod. "Good morning, Megan." She stood so fast her chair rolled backward and struck the wall. He knew her name. That was what shook her most. He had passed her desk for 3 months with a mop bucket. She had said good morning maybe twice. He had remembered her anyway. Rachel looked toward the boardroom. "Are they assembled?" Megan swallowed. "Yes, most of them." "Good." Inside the boardroom, conversation died as Marcus entered. 7 board members turned. Some recognized him immediately. Some needed an extra breath. Walter did not. He knew him before the door finished closing. The man from the lawn. The man with champagne in his collar. The man they had all failed. Rachel set her briefcase at the head of the table. Marcus did not sit yet. He placed one item in front of the chair. A photograph in a clear plastic sleeve. Clara Reed smiling in a marble lobby. Walter looked at it and lowered his eyes. At 7:58, Evelyn Carter arrived. The doors opened hard. She came in wearing a white suit, red lipstick, and the kind of smile that had ended careers. Brian Walsh followed 2 steps behind her, jaw tight, security badge clipped to his belt. Evelyn carried a red folder under one arm. Her retention package. Her reward for another year of control. "Good," she said before she had even reached her chair. "Everyone is here. Let's make this quick. I have a company to run." Then she saw Marcus. She stopped. The red folder slipped half an inch in her hand. Her eyes moved from his face to his suit, then to Rachel, then to the head chair. "What is this?" Rachel opened a folder. "Miss Carter, please take a seat." Evelyn laughed once. "No. I will not take a seat in my own boardroom because some attorney thinks she can stage a little surprise." Rachel did not blink. As of yesterday morning, Meridian Holdings completed the purchase of 62% of Carter Freight Systems. All filings have been executed. All wire transfers cleared. All ownership notices delivered. Silence pressed against the glass walls. Rachel slid a document across the table. Meridian Holdings is now the controlling shareholder. Evelyn stared at the page as if the words might rearrange themselves out of fear. "That is not possible. It is final." "Who is Meridian?" Rachel turned slightly. Marcus pulled out the chair at the head of the table and sat down. The leather gave a soft creak. Evelyn's face changed, not all at once. First confusion, then anger, then something smaller and more private, fear. Marcus folded his hands on the table. "Good morning, Miss Carter." No one moved. Brian's hand drifted toward his radio, then stopped when the 2 boardroom security officers stepped inside and stood by the door. They did not look at Evelyn. They looked at Marcus. Evelyn noticed. Her voice dropped. "You." Marcus nodded. "Yes." "How did you get in here?" Rachel answered, "Bopi could. He owns the controlling stake." Evelyn's laugh came out thin. "He is a janitor." Marcus looked at her for a long moment. "I was a janitor long enough to learn who you were when no one important was watching." The words landed clean. Evelyn's jaw tightened. Walter slowly sat down. Marcus touched the edge of his mother's photograph. "My mother cleaned the east hallway of this building for nearly 20 years. Her name was Clara Reed. Most people here never knew it. I came here 3 months ago to find out what kind of company she gave her body to." His eyes moved around the table. "I learned drivers were shorted on overtime. I learned complaints disappeared. I learned people who wore uniforms were treated like furniture." Then he looked at Evelyn. "And Saturday night, I learned what the chief executive does when she thinks a man has no power." Rachel lifted a small remote. The screen at the end of the room came alive. Evelyn's face drained. "No." Marcus did not look away. "Yes." The video began. The carpet, the laughter, the champagne, the bag, the photograph striking gravel. This time, nobody could pretend they had not seen it. The screen went black, and the silence that followed felt heavier than the video itself. Evelyn Carter stood frozen near the end of the table. The red folder hung from her fingers. Her mouth opened once, then closed. For the first time in years, there was no assistant to soften the room for her. No speechwriter, no applause, no music under the oak trees, just her words, her face, her hand pouring champagne over a kneeling man, Walter Grant removed his glasses and set them on the table. His hands were steady, but his voice was not. "I was there," he said. "I watched it happen." Evelyn turned on him at once. "Walter, do not start pretending you were shocked. You stood right there." "Yes," he said. "I did." That stopped her. The old man looked down at Clara Reed's photograph, then back at Marcus. "And I should have stopped it." No one breathed for a moment. That was the first honest sentence spoken in the room. Evelyn recovered fast. She always had. Survival for her had never meant reflection. It meant attack. "This is edited," she said. "Out of context. A private event. A staff discipline issue twisted into theater." Rachel clicked the remote again. The screen showed a file name, timestamp, and metadata summary. "The original footage has been preserved. We have the source file. We have the device. We have a sworn statement from the server who recorded it." Evelyn's eyes flashed. "A server? You are basing a corporate action on some frightened little caterer?" Marcus leaned forward slightly. "Her name is Lily Bennett." Evelyn looked at him. He did not blink. "You did not know her name either." The sentence hit harder than a shout. Brian Walsh shifted near the door. Sweat had gathered along his hairline. He had seen the part where he searched the bag. He had heard himself laugh. He had watched his own hand flick Clara Reed's photograph like trash. The badge on his belt suddenly felt heavy. Evelyn pointed at Marcus. This man deceived the company. He entered under false pretenses. Rachel turned a page. "Mr. Reed accepted a temporary facilities position through a licensed staffing contractor. Background check passed. Employment paperwork was lawful. There is no fraud in observing a company you are acquiring." A board member named Helen Brooks, who had been quiet until then, folded her hands. "Why did you do it this way, Mr. Reed?" Marcus looked at her, then at the others. "Because reports lie when people are afraid to write the truth." His voice stayed calm. "I read the numbers. I saw revenue growth. I saw strong margins. I saw a company that looked healthy from a distance. But my mother taught me to look at the floor. The floor tells you who is carrying the weight." He touched the photograph. "From the floor, I learned drivers were missing overtime. Dispatchers were crying in stairwells. Warehouse workers were scared to report injuries. People smiled at executives and warned each other before certain leaders walked in." He paused. "And then I saw what happened when one uniform became inconvenient at a party." Evelyn's face tightened. "This is personal revenge." "No," Marcus said. "Revenge would have been one phone call Saturday night. I could have told you who I was in front of everyone." The room went still. "I did not. Because this is not about embarrassing you. This is about whether Carter Freight can be trusted with people's lives, paychecks, and dignity." Walter picked up a printed contract. "Miss Carter," he said. "Section 12 of your employment agreement. Conduct clause." Evelyn went pale. Walter read slowly. "Any public behavior by the chief executive that brings material disrepute to the company, its employees, shareholders, or charitable partners shall constitute grounds for termination for cause." He lowered the paper. "You signed this renewal yourself." Evelyn laughed, but it cracked in the middle. "You cannot be serious. I built this company's growth." Helen Brooks looked at her. "You grew the stock. You did not build the people." That one landed deep. Evelyn turned to the rest of the board, searching faces she used to command. Nobody gave her a place to stand. Then she changed tone, soft, controlled, almost wounded. "Marcus," she said. "Saturday got out of hand. I had been drinking. The donors were watching. The pressure was enormous. You understand pressure. Clearly you do." Marcus said nothing. She took a step closer. "If I had known who you were, I would never have handled it that way." The room seemed to flinch. Even Brian closed his eyes. Marcus looked at her for a long, quiet second. "There it is," he said. Evelyn frowned. "What?" "That is the whole problem." He stood. "You needed to know I owned something before you believed I deserved basic respect." Her lips parted, but no words came. "My mother cleaned this building for nearly 20 years. Nobody important knew who she was. That did not make her less human. It made this company less honest." Rachel looked around the table. Meridian Holdings calls for a vote on immediate termination of Evelyn Carter as Chief Executive Officer for cause, effective today. Evelyn snapped, "You will regret this." Walter raised his hand. 4. Helen raised hers. 4. One by one, every hand rose. 7 hands, no hesitation. Rachel recorded each vote, unanimous. The red folder slipped from Evelyn's hand and hit the carpet. Her $4 million retention package spread open at her feet. Marcus looked toward the door. "Mr. Walsh," he said quietly, "your badge and key card." Brian Walsh looked at the badge on his belt like it belonged to another man. For years, that badge had opened doors before he reached them. It had made guards straighten, assistants step aside, drivers lower their voices. He had mistaken access for respect. He had mistaken Evelyn's approval for power. Now Marcus Reed sat at the head of the table, and Brian understood the difference. "Mr. Walsh," Rachel said, "please place your company identification and access card on the table." Brian glanced at Evelyn. She did not look back. That hurt him more than he expected. He had dragged people out for her, blocked complaints for her, stood beside her at events like a loyal wall. But now that the wall had cracked, she had no use for the bricks. His hand moved slowly to his belt. The badge came off with a soft click. Then the key card. Another click. Small sounds, final sounds. He set both on the polished table. Marcus looked at him. "You searched an employee's personal property without cause, in public, on video. You handled a private photograph with deliberate disrespect. You are suspended pending investigation." Brian's jaw tightened. "I was following orders." Marcus did not raise his voice. "That is not the same as having no choice." The words found the room and stayed there. Brian looked down. For the first time since anyone at Carter Freight had known him, his shoulders lowered. "Yes, sir," he said. 2 guards opened the boardroom door. Brian walked out between them, not dragged, not shoved, just emptied. At the doorway, he paused as if he might apologize. But shame can be a heavy thing. Sometimes it lands on the tongue and will not move. He left without speaking. Evelyn watched the door close, then turned back like she could still reclaim the room through posture alone. "You have made a very expensive mistake," she said. "All of you." Walter Grant folded the conduct clause and set it beside his legal pad. "No, Evelyn. The expensive mistake was letting this go on for 6 years because the numbers looked good." Her eyes cut to him. "You loved those numbers." "I did," he said. "That is on me." The honesty unsettled her more than anger would have. Rachel gathered the voting record and handed a page to Marcus. "Effective immediately, Miss Carter is removed as Chief Executive Officer. Severance, retention bonus, and unvested equity are forfeited under Section 12, subject to final legal review." Evelyn's face went white. "My equity?" "Unvested equity," Rachel corrected. "The vested portion remains governed by the shareholder agreement." "This is theft. This is contract law." Helen Brooks pushed the red folder farther away with 2 fingers, as if it were something spoiled. Evelyn looked from face to face. 7 people. 7 closed doors. Then her voice rose. "You think he cares about this company? He came here in costume. He humiliated me in a boardroom. You are handing Carter Freight to a man who lied to get inside." Marcus stood. The chair moved back with a low scrape. "I came through the same door my mother used." That stopped the room again. Marcus picked up Clara's photograph. She did not get a boardroom. She did not get a title. She got swollen hands, late buses, and people who stepped over her wet floor signs like she was part of the building. But she believed work had honor, even when people with power forgot theirs. His voice softened, and she was right. Evelyn swallowed. Her anger had nowhere clean to go. Marcus placed the photograph back on the table. "You may collect personal belongings from your office under supervision. Company devices, files, and records remain here. These officers will escort you." The 2 guards by the door stepped forward. For a second, Evelyn did not move. The room watched the last layer of her authority peel away. No music, no cameras she controlled, no applause to rescue her, just footsteps waiting. "This way, Mom," one guard said. The word Mom sounded different now, not respectful. Procedural. Evelyn picked up her purse. She left the red folder on the floor. As she passed Marcus, she leaned in just enough for only him and Rachel to hear. "You will never belong in rooms like this." Marcus looked at her with a sadness that was almost mercy. "I know," he said. "That is why the room has to change." The elevator ride down took 30 floors and felt longer than most careers. Evelyn stood between the guards, staring at her reflection in the brushed steel doors. Her white suit still looked perfect. Her hair had not moved. Her lipstick had not faded. From the outside, she looked like a woman leaving a meeting. But her eyes told the truth. When the doors opened into the lobby, the morning shift was arriving. Drivers, receptionists, accountants, cleaners, warehouse supervisors, security staff, people who had seen the video before breakfast, people who had whispered Marcus's name with new weight. No one cheered. No one booed. That was worse. They simply stopped and watched. Evelyn walked across the marble with the two guards behind her. Her heels clicked too loudly. Near the east hallway, Mrs. Alvarez stood beside her mop cart. A yellow caution sign rested on the wet floor. Evelyn's heel touched the damp edge and slipped. Not enough to fall, enough to scare her. Her hand shot out and caught the velvet rope beside the reception desk. Mrs. Alvarez stepped forward by instinct. "You all right, Mom?" Evelyn looked at the cleaner. For one strange second, there was no title between them. Only two women standing on a floor that could humble anyone. Then Evelyn straightened. She did not answer. She walked through the revolving doors and out into the Atlanta heat. Upstairs, Marcus remained by the boardroom table after everyone else sat down again. Walter approached him slowly. "Your mother," he said. "Clara, I think I remember her, East Hallway. She used to hum." Marcus looked at the photograph. A small smile touched his face. "Gospel," he said. "Mostly old hymns." Walter's eyes reddened. "I am sorry I did not remember sooner." Marcus held the old man's gaze. "Remembering now has to mean something." Walter nodded. For the first time that morning, the company began to feel less like a machine and more like a place where repair might still be possible. By Tuesday night, Lily Bennett's video had escaped the company. It did not leak all at once. It moved the way truth often moves when people are afraid. Quiet first. Hand to hand, phone to phone. A cousin sent it to a friend at a local station. A warehouse clerk sent it to his pastor. A dispatcher sent it to her sister with one sentence. "This is what we have been trying to tell people." At 6:45, Channel 8 ran 40 seconds of it. The anchor's face was stiff as the footage played. Marcus kneeling on the white carpet. Evelyn Carter holding the microphone. Champagne falling in a slow golden sheet. The station blurred some faces, but not the truth. By 8, the full video was online. By midnight, it had been shared across Atlanta, then Georgia, then farther. Former employees began writing their own stories in the comments. Drivers talked about missing overtime. Receptionists talked about being called difficult after reporting harassment. Cleaners talked about doors closing in their faces when executives passed. The video had started with one man. It had opened a room full of ghosts. Inside Carter Freight headquarters, Rachel Moore did not waste time. On Wednesday morning, she opened the books. She set up a conference room on the 28th floor and turned it into an investigation center. White banker boxes lined one wall. Laptops covered the table. Legal pads filled with names, dates, signatures, and questions that made people sit very still when they heard them. Marcus gave her one instruction: follow everything. Rachel looked over her glasses. No limits? No limits. What if it reaches people still in this building? Marcus held her gaze, especially then. By noon, the tip line went live. Anonymous. Protected. Reviewed by outside counsel. Megan Price helped draft the announcement with hands that still trembled, but she did not look away from the screen. When the email went company-wide, the building changed. For years, fear had lived in the walls like mold. You could not always see it, but people breathed it in. Now someone had opened a window. The first call came from a driver named Samuel Ortiz. His voice was rough, and he kept apologizing. "I got records," he said. 6 years of them. They said it was a payroll error, every time. I stopped asking because my wife got sick and I needed the insurance. Rachel's associate listened without interrupting. "You did the right thing calling." Samuel went silent. Then he said, "Nobody ever said that before." The second report came from a dispatcher named Alina Brooks. She had written an email 2 years earlier after a supervisor used a slur in the stairwell. 9 days later, her schedule changed. 2 weeks after that, she was gone. Her voice broke halfway through the call. "I kept the email," she said. I do not know why. I guess I wanted proof I was not crazy. You were not crazy, Rachel said. Alina cried then, not loudly, just enough that Rachel took off her glasses and pinched the bridge of her nose. By Friday, the tip line had logged more than 100 messages. By the following week, patterns began to form. 11 terminations, 6 years, Black and Latino employees, different departments, same language in the files, restructuring, performance concerns, cultural fit. The phrases were clean. The timing was not. A warehouse lead dismissed 1 month before his pension vested. A receptionist written up for tone after asking about equal pay. A driver suspended after refusing to drive past federal hours of service limits. A dispatcher pushed out after reporting racist language. 11 careers, 11 families. One signature appeared again and again. E. Carter. Walter Grant sat in the investigation room while Rachel laid the files out in a row. He looked older than he had on Monday. Not because of time. Because guilt ages a person quickly when it finally gets honest. I signed off on some of these reports, he said. Rachel did not soften it. Yes, you did. He nodded slowly. I trusted the summary. Marcus stood at the window, looking down at the loading docks. That is how harm survives, he said. It gets summarized until nobody has to look at the person. Nobody answered. Then came the charity ledgers. That was the part Evelyn had never feared enough. The Carter Foundation Gala had raised over $2 million. Less than 300,000 had reached scholarship programs. The rest disappeared into event planning, consulting fees, donor experience packages, luxury lodging, and a yacht rental billed as youth outreach. Rachel placed the invoice on the table. Even she looked angry. Walter read it once, then again. A yacht? Marcus turned from the window. My mother cleaned floors so people like us could be told there was no money, he said. But there was always money for the show. Outside the building, cameras waited now. Reporters stood beneath umbrellas. Microphones pointed toward the front doors. Evelyn's public statement had called the video unfortunate and incomplete. By the end of the week, that statement looked like smoke against a fire. Inside the lobby, Mrs. Alvarez pushed her mop past the east hallway. She saw Marcus step out of the elevator and pause near Clara's old spot. You all right, mister? Reed? She asked. He looked tired, not weak. Tired in the way people look when they have started carrying other people's stories carefully. I will be, he said. Mrs. Alvarez nodded. Good, because folks are starting to believe you. Marcus looked toward the loading dock, where Samuel Ortiz had just walked in carrying a folder thick with pay stubs. No, he said quietly. They are starting to believe themselves. The first settlement meeting was held in the same boardroom, where Evelyn Carter had lost her chair. Marcus chose that room on purpose, not to make anyone feel small, to make the company remember where power had failed. Alina Brooks arrived first. She wore a navy dress and held her purse with both hands, like she might need to leave quickly. Her husband waited downstairs because she said she needed to do this part alone. When the elevator doors opened, she stood there for a full second before stepping out. Rachel Moore met her at reception. Ms. Brooks, Rachel said, thank you for coming. Alina gave a tight little smile. I almost did not. Rachel nodded. That makes sense. Those 3 words loosened something in Alina's face. Not much, just enough. Inside the boardroom, Marcus stood when she entered. Walter Grant stood too. So did Helen Brooks. No one sat while she was standing. No one rushed her. Alina looked at the head chair, then at Marcus. I was fired in an email, she said. No meeting. No explanation. Just an email at 6 in the morning. Marcus did not reach for a file. He did not hide behind paper. That should not have happened. Her eyes filled fast, and she hated that they did. She blinked hard. I had 2 kids in school. My mother was living with us. I thought I did something wrong for almost 2 years. You did not, Marcus said. The room went very still. Alina pressed one hand to her mouth. The sound that came out of her was small and broken. Not a sob yet, the sound before it. Rachel slid a folder across the table. This includes back pay, lost benefits, interest, and a separate settlement offer. You may review it with your own attorney before signing anything. The company will pay that legal fee. Alina stared at the folder. And my record? Marcus looked at Rachel. Rachel answered, corrected. Your personnel file will reflect wrongful termination. You will also receive a written apology from Carter Freight. Alina laughed once through tears. An apology does not give me those years back. No, Marcus said. It does not. He let that truth sit. He did not decorate it. But the company can stop pretending it did not take them. That was the first meeting. Then came Samuel Ortiz, carrying a grocery bag full of pay stubs. He spread them across the table with hands that shook from anger more than age. My wife used to ask why I kept everyone, he said. I told her paper remembers when people don't. Rachel's associate calculated the unpaid overtime while Samuel watched. The number grew, week by week, month by month, year by year. When it stopped, Samuel leaned back as if someone had struck him. That much? With interest, Rachel said. Samuel looked at Marcus. I missed my granddaughter's birthday for one of those runs. Marcus lowered his eyes. I am sorry. Samuel swallowed. You going to say that to all of us? Yes. Samuel nodded once. Good. Some folks need to hear it more than money. By the end of the month, 9 of the 11 former employees had sat across from Marcus. 2 joined by video because they had moved out of state. One man, a former warehouse lead named Deshaun Miller, did not speak for almost 5 minutes. He just stared at the table. Then he said, I thought I was over it. Helen Brooks, sitting quietly beside Walter, answered before Marcus could. Sometimes being believed is what brings the pain back up. Deshaun looked at her. She looked ashamed, but she did not look away. I am learning that late, she said. That mattered. Not enough to erase harm, but enough to begin repair. Meanwhile, Evelyn's world kept shrinking. Her lawyers tried to push back. They called the video inflammatory. They called the personnel files incomplete. They argued the charity expenses were misclassified, not misused. But Rachel had documents, witnesses, emails, and one suspended security chief who had cited loyalty was not worth being the last person left holding the bag. Brian Walsh sat for deposition in a plain conference room with no windows. His suit looked too large now. His voice stayed flat. Yes, he said. Miss Carter told me to search Marcus Reed's bag. Rachel Terpage. Had you seen any evidence he had stolen anything? No. Had anyone reported a missis item? No. Why did you comply? Brian looked at his hands. Because she wanted a show. The court reporter's keys clicked softly. Rachel waited. Brian exhaled. And because I cared more about keeping my position than doing what was right. That sentence traveled farther than he knew. 8 months after the gala, Evelyn settled. The amount stayed confidential. The conditions did not. Personal payments to the 11. Repayment of misused foundation funds. A public apology. A consent agreement barring her from serving as an officer or director of any public company for 10 years. Her apology was recorded in a small studio with no audience. She wore a plain gray blazer. No emerald gown, no spotlight, no orchestra. She read from a paper at first. Then she stopped. Her eyes lifted to the camera. I treated a man as less than human because of his uniform and because of his race. No pressure excuses that. No champagne excuses that. I was not drunk on wine that night. I was drunk on power. For once, nobody in America laughed. At Carter Freight, Marcus watched the apology from his office with Clara's photograph beside the screen. When it ended, he turned it off. Rachel stood near the door. Does it help? Marcus was quiet. Outside his window, the loading dock moved with morning life. Trucks backing in, drivers waving. A cleaner crossing the lobby with a mop bucket, and her head held a little higher than before. It helps if we make sure nobody needs one like it again, he said. 6 months after the gala, the Carter Freight Tower looked the same from the street. Same glass walls, same marble lobby, same elevators rising through 30 floors of Atlanta air. But inside, almost nothing was the same. The first thing people noticed was the sound. The building used to sound afraid. Shoes moved fast. Voices dropped when executives passed. Doors closed softly, like even hinges were trying not to offend anyone. Now the lobby sounded alive. Drivers laughed near the coffee station. Cleaners spoke to managers by name. Dispatchers walked through the front entrance, not the side door, and nobody told them they were in the wrong place. The glass elevator still carried suits. The steel surface elevator still carried carts. But Marcus Reed had made sure both elevators stopped on every floor that mattered. which was all of them. On a cool September morning, the whole company gathered in the east hallway. 900 employees watched from the lobby, the stairs, and the balcony railings above. Some wore suits, some wore uniforms, some wore work boots still dusty from the dock. Nobody was asked to stand in the back. Marcus stood beside a small bronze plaque covered by a blue cloth. Rachel Moore stood near him. Walter Grant stood a few feet away, hands clasped, eyes wet before the ceremony even began. Mrs. Alvarez held her mop handle like a cane. Lily Bennett stood in the front row, nervous in a simple navy dress, twisting her fingers together. Marcus looked out at the crowd. He had spoken in courtrooms. He had spoken to investors. He had closed deals worth more money than most people could imagine. But this was harder, because this was personal. My mother, Clara Reed, cleaned this hallway for nearly 20 years, he said. She came in before sunrise. She went home after dark. She missed dinners. She missed church nights. She missed rest. But she never missed the chance to tell me that honest work is not small work. The hallway went quiet. Marcus touched the old watch on his wrist. It still does not tick, he said, looking down at it. It stopped years ago. I never fixed it because it reminds me of something. Time can stop for the people we love, but a promise can keep moving. Mrs. Alvarez wiped her eyes with the back of her glove. Marcus pulled the cloth away. The plaque caught the morning light. The Clara Reed Scholarship. Full tuition every year for children of Carter Freight service workers, drivers, cleaners, guards, kitchen staff, warehouse crews, and support employees. The first class had 12 names. Marcus read them slowly. Every name mattered. Every name landed. The last name was Lily Bennett. Lily covered her mouth. Her knees almost gave, and Rachel gently took her arm. Marcus smiled at her. You kept the camera steady, he said, when people with more power kept their eyes on the ground. Lily shook her head, crying now. I was scared. I know, Marcus said. Courage usually is. The applause started small, then it grew. It rolled through the lobby, up the stairs, across the marble, into the old east hallway, where Clara Reed once hummed gospel while the rest of the building slept. Walter stepped forward after the ceremony. He looked at Marcus, then at the plaque. I used to think leadership meant knowing the numbers, he said. Marcus waited. Walter's voice broke. I was wrong. Marcus looked across the lobby at Samuel Ortiz, laughing with his grandson, at Alina Brooks talking with the new head of Dispatch, at Deshaun Miller wearing a supervisor badge he should have had years earlier. Numbers matter, Marcus said, but people carry them. That winter, the old Gala estate was sold. Carter Freight bought it, not for donors, not for senators, not for cameras. The next summer, the lawn under the oak trees held the company picnic. No velvet ropes, no champagne towers, no security searching bags at the gate. Children ran across the same grass where Marcus had been escorted out. Drivers grilled ribs beside accountants. Cleaners sat at the best tables under the shade. Lily came home from college for the weekend and helped hand out lemonade, because some habits of service are not shameful when they come from love. Near sunset, a little boy pointed at Marcus, who was carrying a stack of folding chairs. Grandma, is that the chairman? Mrs. Alvarez smiled. That is Mr. Reed. But why is he carrying chairs? She looked at Marcus, then at the people around him. Because he remembers what hands are for. Most mornings, if someone came early enough, they could still find Marcus in the east hallway before the building woke. Suit jacket folded over a chair, sleeves rolled up, mop moving in long, patient strokes beside his mother's plaque. One new hire saw him there and whispered to Paul Dawson at the security desk, "Is that really the owner?" Paul smiled. "Yes, Mom. And he still mops?" Paul looked down the hallway where the marble shone under the soft morning lights. "Around here," he said, "that is how we remember who we are." Marcus heard him but did not turn around. He only smiled a little and kept working. The watch on his wrist still did not tick. It never would, and that was all right. Some promises do not need time. They only need someone willing to keep them. So here is the part worth holding on to. The person cleaning your floor, carrying your bags, driving your truck, serving your meal, or guarding your door may have a story you cannot see. Treat them like their name matters before you know what they own. If this story made you think of someone who wears a uniform to work, send it to them. Let them know they are seen. And tell me this. If you had been Marcus that night, would you have revealed the truth at the gala, or waited until Monday and let the whole room learn it the hard way?